Hi, and this is part 2 of the basic costing on the Storefront program. If you watched part 1, you'll remember that we had the following costing screen, and we are still basing this costing on our material price with 100% contribution to give us our total price. We are not taking factory costs and installation costs into consideration yet. The purpose of this video is just to look at the other options on the screen so that you understand the costing 100% before we move on to calculating our factory and our installation costs. So let's have a closer look at what we have now on the screen. We did in the previous video go in and set our supplier discount. We set a 25% for our profiles, a 25% for our finishing, and a 15% for our components. Components is the same as hardware. We also said that our discount on the glazing was 0. Because we control our own glazing prices, we have put our net price in onto the glass file. Then let's have a look. We can also specify wastage. So we have a wastage percentage for the profiles. We have a wastage percentage for the finish, for the components. And then you'll see that the glass doesn't have a percentage wastage, it has a rand value wastage as the wastage on the glazing. And that is because if I simply go back and say edit my glass, for each type of glass, so if we go to formal glass, we can specify a wastage factor for that type of glass. So each type of glass can have a different wastage factor, which means then that your wastage is calculated as a rand value, not as a percentage value. These are the defaults: 10% on the profiles, 10% on the finish, and 10% on the components. Those are realistic values to use if you are processing your order through the Storefront system. Because Storefront in the ordering process automatically optimizes your material, a 10% wastage on your profiles and finish is realistic. If you were to be doing that on a manual basis, you'd have to work with at least a 20% wastage. So immediately, just processing the job on Storefront is going to save you 10% on your profiles and 10% on your finishing. The components, you have to leave a small wastage. That is for breakages, it's for things like gaskets and wool pile, which come in long rolls, and obviously you cut pieces off and you have offcuts that you can't reuse. Alright, so that explains those figures there. The consumables we did mention in the last video, but there you can change that percentage. The default is 3%, and that is probably realistic. It is not going to make a big difference to your overall costing, whether that sits at 3% or 5%. How do you determine that percentage? Well, you can look historically, let's say go back 3 months, look in total what you have spent on profiles, finishing, components and glazing, and then have a look at what other expenses you've had in your factory. Protective tape, cleaning solutions, silicone, even your saw blades and your drill bits, anything which gets consumed and used in the process of manufacturing those windows. And then just express those additional items as a percentage of what you spent on your profiles, finishing, components and glazing. Okay, so I think we should all understand that is fairly simple. Then let's have a look at this figure, total square meter, the area. Now that is giving you the total area of those windows and doors. So if I was to take all those windows and doors and lay them out on the floor, they would cover a total area of 22.9 square meters. And what you can do is you can put in a packaging cost here. So let's just say my packaging cost me 25 Rand a square meter. I can put that 25 Rand in. Remember to use the refresh button just to update those figures. And that's allowed a figure of 572 Rand for my packaging. So that is an optional quantity or entity that you can put in there to allow for the packaging of your products. Maybe you wrap your windows in plastic or put them into a cardboard box, whatever the case is, that is what your packaging figure is for there. So once you've taken your profiles, added the wastage but taken off the discount, the same for your finishing, your components and your glazing, Then we've allowed a 3% for our consumables, and we've allowed 25 Rand per square meter for our packaging. I get in this situation here, total material cost of 16,000 Rand. Okay, so let's move on. Now, we don't at this stage worry about factory costs, we don't worry about installation costs. What is this additional cost? This additional cost is a figure that will be redistributed back into the unit price of each window if you put something into that field. So let's say on this job I've got an additional cost of 2,000 Rand. Now that 2,000 Rand can represent anything. It could be maybe this job needs some special bending or rolling, or it's particularly far, or whatever the case is, whatever your need is for that additional cost. You can put that additional cost in there and it will just add to the costs on this particular job. So our total costs now on this job are 18,000 Rand. In other words, we've taken our total material cost of 16,000 Rand. We haven't added any factory costs, we haven't added any installation costs, we've added an additional cost of 2,000, which gives us a total cost of 18,000 Rand. Our contribution is set to 100%. That is because we're working in this stage on our material price times 2, which is to add 100% to our material price. So we add another 18,000 Rand. That 18,000 Rand there has to cover my factory costs, it has to cover my installation costs, and it has to give me some profit on this job. So it is an estimate of those costs. Only once we have worked out these 4 figures in blue are we going to know what our true factory costs and our true installation costs are. And that will be covered in the next video. So my total on my contract is 36. If I do want to give a customer discount, let's say I want to give 5% to this customer, then it's going to subtract 1,800 Rand for the discount, which gives me my net profit of 16,200. Then there is this field here, which is headed transport cost. So let's say I've got an additional 1,500 Rand for transport on this job. I can put that 1,500 Rand in. Now, just notice something, that this figure here, which is headed transport cost at the moment, is put in after your net profit. If you are a business manufacturing aluminium windows, your core business is not transport, so you should not put a profit on your transport. But this figure, you can actually put anything you want as the description there. So it doesn't have to be a transport cost. It could be any other cost. Maybe you've got to hire scaffolding on this job. Then you could change that to, let's change that to say scaffolding cost. So you can change this description of this cost to whatever you want. Now the difference between your additional costs under this other cost window and this one, which we have now called scaffolding costs, is that your additional costs, and it says here, additional costs are distributed into the unit price. So that 2,000 Rand is going to be distributed back into the unit price on each of your windows and doors. And it's distributed proportional to the total value of that. So if our shopfront one that we did on this design represents 23% of the total value of this project, then 23% of this 2,000 Rand will be allocated to that shopfront. Whereas this scaffolding cost or transport cost, whatever you want to call it, is just shown as a separate line item on your quote. That then gives us our contract value excluding VAT. We add our VAT, we get our contract value including VAT. And this figure here, your percentage markup on material, this figure, which is sitting at 123.1%, represents how much have I marked my basic material up to get to my final selling price. So although we were working on a percentage markup of our material of 100% through our gross profit figure here, we have still added now scaffolding costs and additional costs So therefore our true markup on material is actually 123.1%. Now that is an important figure to watch, because you will learn for your business on a typical job what is your markup on material. And if you cost a job and you see that markup on material is suddenly sitting at 60%, then you can use that as a warning. Something has gone wrong, I've left out a price, or I don't have price for my glass, or whatever the situation is. Okay. If I suddenly find that it's going to 200%, then again, it's a warning that there could possibly be something wrong with my costing. So that explains our main costing screen a little bit better. Your sheet price and cut to size price, you can change that to cut to size. And then remember, in our glass file, I have two different prices. We just go to edit my glass file. You'll see in my glass file, I have a square meter price. So that is the price if I'm going to buy sheets of glass and cut them myself. And then I have a cut to size price. And the difference is that when you work on the cut to size price, the program will not add the wastage factor in, because your supplier is cutting your glass and they're going to cover the breakages in that process. You do have to push the recalculate or the re-estimate buttons before that comes in. Then let's just have a look at the bottom of the screen here. This is where you can put your quote details. So you can put in a quote number. If you have a quote number that you run, it will then have the date that this quote was done on. It will have the validity. So I can say that this quote is valid for 30 days. I can put a client name, Mrs. Jones. The company, I'll just put here private. The terms are COD. And then I can put in address here if I want. This information will be printed on the quote. And we will look at the various reports that are available in Starfront in a separate video. Let's now look at the function of these last few buttons here. First of all, the costing details. What this is it's a summary of this particular job that you're busy costing. So you can see I've got reference door 3, shopfront 1, and then window 01 through to window 05. That was a Vistafold, a Clip 44, these were all Swift 28 windows. Then I can specify the quantity of those windows. So remember, during our design process, once we specify our reference, we have to specify the quantity. If I made a mistake and said, oops, sorry, I was meant to put in 2 windows there, I can still change the quantity on the screen. I don't have to go all the way back to my design screen and change the quantity there. Same with my installation. You'll remember we left our installation at 0, so there's nothing that we're going to worry about for this stage. And then there is our contribution. I have my contribution set to a flat rate of 100%. I can change it for one individual window if I want. So let's say I decide this Vistafold door is coming out a little bit expensive, so I could go and change that, for example, to 80% on that door. And then I need to recalculate or re-estimate to get those prices to adjust. Let's just leave it to 100%. You can also use this box at the top here, set all contributions. So if I want to set all my contributions to 110%, I can type in 110%, and I can say set all contributions. You'll see they all change automatically to 110%. Or I can set it to the default that is in my program, which my default is set to 100% at the moment anyhow. This is a small button that you can use just to print out that costing. Again, we'll look at that in the reports video. These estimate and recalculate buttons are the same as these estimate and recalculate buttons here. It just is so you can stay on the screen and update your costing. Alright, so I haven't changed anything, so I'm just going to leave mine like that. Then there's a button to reset financial defaults. I can either set my parameters specifically just for this job. For example, my supplier discount, my finish discount, my component discount, I only set for this particular contract. What I should do is I should go through to my defaults and under my defaults, then I go and change it, so that every new contract I do automatically will pick up my correct supplier discount values or my wastage figures, whatever I've got in on the system. So that button, if you do push it, it'll take everything back to your defaults that you set in the program. The refresh button we've just discussed, if you adjust any of these white boxes, click on the refresh, it'll just update your screen for you. And then let's have a look at the estimate. So now on this particular job, you can see we were, if we look in before that, 35,700. If I click on the estimate button, it does just a slightly faster costing. And there we can see that our contract value before VAT has changed from 35,600 to 35,713. So generally the estimate will be fractionally higher because all of the small adjustments where small pieces of gasket are removed or small pieces of bead are removed are left out of the estimate function. It's just so that it's a little bit faster. If you look back at your history here, you'll see that on the 16th of the 4th, the quote was created. On the 28th of the 4th, I did a costing, but then I aborted the costing. So if you push the cancel button halfway through, you can see that the costing was aborted, so you don't think that that is the total price. Then on the 28th, I recosted this project. On the 29th, I recosted this project, which was today, and then on the 29th we re-estimated. So I keep a history of what was done on the project so I can understand the effect on my pricing. So that is your estimate button. It's just a slightly quicker costing. Your recalculate is your accurate costing, and then finally you've got your accept button, which just saves those changes against that particular project. So hopefully that now makes a little bit more sense. We have now covered everything we need to know about the basics of the costing on the Storefront program. The next video, we will look at how do you determine your factory labor and your factory overheads. Those are these two figures where the headings are shown in blue here, your installation labor and your installation overheads, which initially will all be set to 0. We need to determine those for our business so that we can determine our factory costs and our installation costs accurately. Once we can add our factory and installation costs, we don't need to go in at a GP of 100% anymore. We can now go down to 20 or 25% because we are taking all of our costs into consideration. So once again, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Please stay safe, stay healthy and stay happy. And we'll see each other again soon in the next video. Bye-bye.